Just waiting for it to do its thing. Here we go.
I can just, instead of images, we can show like this. So we've got this.
We do, and you should do that. Good afternoon and welcome to another Grey's Westminster Friday live stream. We are very happy to see you, all of you. And I'm Becky.
Constant, it's end of the week.
It is the end of the week. We are ready for the weekend to go shoot some film.
Yes. Actually, I just finished my role.
I know, it was impressive.
Surprisingly, not on F4, but F6.
Yes. Today we're talking about the F4. Now, the history behind this stream is that we wanted to do the homages to the film cameras, but because we'd started with the F6, we're going backwards in time. So a little counterintuitive for most people. I wanted to do an F4 and F3 combined, but then your argument was...
No, I think F3 kind of has its own place.
It's true.
It deserves its own hour, maybe two.
I just want to talk about the F3, basically.
But actually, when we started to think about F4, we thought, well, F4 is going to take us about 10, 15 minutes to talk about, and then we can move on to F3. But once we kind of started to read about and the significance of that camera, obviously, it wasn't the first camera with autofocus, but if you look at the Nikon cameras, it was the first professional camera with a more or less kind of modern age of autofocus, because obviously we got F3AF prior to that, and then F501, but F4 was the one that kind of improved on all that.
So we've got enough to talk about
I think so.
In a nutshell. Now, I'm actually amazed at how many people have commented and said that they've either used or had or have an F4 or an F4S. And I'm excited to read your comments, so I will do that shortly. The first order of business, though, is that the Coffee Fund is open. It is very much needed. It's been one heck of a week.
Very long one.
It has been a long week. And any contributions are massively appreciated. I have to say thank you to those of you who have contributed via PayPal. Ian, I saw your contribution this morning when I went onto PayPal. Thank you very much. Anyone else I've missed, I'm sorry. I will go a bit further back in time to see if there's anyone I haven't acknowledged. But thank you for that. Also, there was something else I wanted to say. Are we going to do the competition at the end?
The lemon competition.
The lemon competition.
The best lemon goes to?
Yeah. We'll do the lemon competition at the end, but just remind me not to forget it.
Okay. I'm with you.
Before I turn off the stream, because I did forget one week. And then we'll do another competition. I will also, before talking about the F4 quickly, talk about these new books.
Oh, yeah, we got some new books in. That's literally just came in this morning, isn't it?
That's right. So these are from Germany. So Uli Koch, as some of you will know, he did a book called Nikon 100. I think it was just called Nikon 100 Anniversary.
Yeah.
In fact, it's on the shelf over there, so I can see it. And that was a single-volumed, large book. But this one, he's now done a second edition, which includes a lot of items that were missing from the first one, and specifically talks about the Nikon F. So we've got the camera, which includes pictures of, let's see if I can find it. 1 second. It includes pictures of the prototypes.
Just don't show any naked pictures.
No. So this is actually one of the later prototypes, but it includes pictures and information of the prototypes of the Nikon F, which is pretty cool. And then we've got one that's all about the Nikon F lenses, and also charts and tables that have been updated. And then the last one is the accessories, which is the biggest of the three, actually. Because there's so many accessories. And he's collaborated with a number of collectors. Apparently, he has an entire house dedicated to his collection, because he did one on the microscopes, like 50 years of the microscopes. I mean, he's collected everything that is everything about Nikon. So we have just 3 sets of these books. They come in a set of 3. Off the top of my head, I believe they are £165 plus postage.
For the whole set.
For the whole set.
Not each book.
They're not on the website yet. They will be once we finish the stream and I've had time to put them on the website. There's very small business feel to it when it's like, I got to go and do that myself. Yes, I do. So I will. But if you would like those, we will order more depending on demand. But at the moment, we've just got 3 sets. So yeah. Vinny P. Vince says, £20. Thank God it's Friday. TGIF.
I agree.
Exactly. Adrian, a needed coffee. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Tulia Kada, also, thank you so much. And Ian Ian Knox, and Peter Simonson. Thank you for your Swedish krona. Thank you very, very much. We massively appreciate it. Right. So now I've talked about the books. I did that bit, didn't I?
Yes. Okay.
We're going to, as I'd said, tomatoes. Thank you.
Yes. No, we've done tomatoes. We've done lemons.
Potatoes. Lemons was last week. I have to find another thing. I love the creative.
Another vegetable.
I love the creative comments. Tomatoes are a fruit, as are lemons. But anyway.
Patatas.
Right. So we're going to talk about the F4. Now, I've got this lovely little 100 milestones that Nikon produced for their 100th anniversary. And I wanted to read out this little segment on the F4. What did you do with the brochure?
I had this vintage F4 brochure. Here it is.
Yeah, that's from Gray's collection there. So we've got some segments from that. But they said 1988, the Nikon F4, less than 5 years after the launch of the F3, the rapid development of camera technology meant that Nikon began planning a replacement for its flagship camera.
Yeah, I think they're referring here not to F3, which came out in 1980 or 1979. It's actually F3AF that came out in 1983.
Right. And also they're talking about the development.
Exactly. So if they say 5 years after F3...
they started planning the development.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. So it gave them a bit of time. Because the Nikon F4 came out in 1988. Ironically, we don't have an F4 in stock. Otherwise, I'd be showing you the camera right now. So we're going to have to make do with pictures.
On the internet.
Pictures on the internet. But the beautiful thing is, look, Joe said, I love my F4Ss. I have two. I swear it has image stabilization. It's that weightiness that does it. Joe, I'm sure that's what it is. There were a few people mentioning that they had been shooting with their F4s just recently. Nick Han says, I have had an F3 and F4 with my job work, but never owned either. And has an FM2 and an F501.
Yeah, and Samantha says cabbages.
Cabbages is our word for this.
I think so. I agree.
But we'll announce it at the end because otherwise people get so confused and they start writing cabbages in the comments and we need it afterwards.
Fill us up with cabbages.
That's right. And Baxter said the F4 was the first Nikon Pro body to rely on batteries. It's true, you couldn't use it without batteries, whereas the F3 you could use with or without batteries.
That's true.
We'll talk about that when we get to the F3 homage, which we will do.
It's going to be a whole afternoon.
It will probably. Now, Christopher says the F4 and F4S were nice cameras, but the AF wasn't that great. Well, this is not untrue. However, considering the era, I think that it did pretty well.
I mean, they had to start somewhere, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
So I guess, we've seen the development with an autofocus system, and I guess the current DSLRs like D6 and D50 are the pinnacle of the AF system.
Yeah, so you compare an F4 with a D850 or a D5 or D6, and yes. But if you compare an F4... what I would be interested to know, for example, for Nick Can, who's got an F501 but used an F4, which one was faster? Because the F501 came first.
Or F3AF.
Yeah, well,
it's like a huge difference. So at the time, it was groundbreaking. And we talked about F501, which was first AF camera from Nikon. And the first AF camera overall was one made by Minolta. I think it's Maxim, something like 7,000 or something like that.
That's pretty interesting that Minolta did the first autofocus camera.
But the thing about this, yes, they came out first.
Yeah.
But Nikon improved on that.
Yes.
You see, so therefore included the AF system, they've included the fast shutter speeds, which again, F4 wasn't the first camera. So I think something like FM2 had 8,000 of a second sync speed. The high flash sync speed as well, 250s of a second, didn't come first on F4, but they improved on that. And then you got multi-pattern metering as well.
Yes, and in fact, according to this is the milestone thing. It said autofocus was the primary concern because body integral AF systems were in their infancy and many pros remained unconvinced about relying on AF. Professionals, they won't buy a new camera and buy into a new system.
Yeah, when you get Z6 and you just can't use autofocus because you can't trust the system yet. So we talked about it last week.
We did.
So here, that was literally the same thing.
Yeah. Same thing was happening in the 80s, Con.
How could I use autofocus where manual focus is so reliable?
Exactly. Nikon knew that the success of the F4 depended on it possessing the most advanced and dependable body integral AF system of the time. By the launch date of September 1988, September 1988.
September, there was a launch date, okay?
Yeah.
So, and it's actually came out in December. It's supposed to come out in November.
But
They've
it was a delay.
delayed it due to high demand, semiconductor shortage.
I love it. No.
Whatever pandemic they had at the time.
Whatever the problem was, but there were delays even then.
Yeah.
This is 30 odd years ago.
And actually, they talk about that because they didn't expect such high demands,
Yeah.
that they literally had to prioritize professional photographers.
Yes.
So I would personally say it probably was one of the first kind of iterations of NPS.
Yeah, right. Where Nikon was shocked and astonished that a camera that they made was popular
I know.
and that professionals wanted to use.
Didn't learn anything from it.
And 34 years later, 34 years later, I should know that. I couldn't remember how old I was the other day. Someone asked me and I'd forgotten. By the launch date, the F4 had won over doubting pros, including focus tracking for moving subjects. The first Nikon to do so first Nikon to have focus tracking, and being the first pro Nikon body to include a built-in winder.
Yeah, that's true. So focus tracking, we're talking about continuous focusing. So again, first of a kind.
Wow.
And then build and winder. Yes, you didn't have to crank up each frame. You just press the button and it just winds it up.
Yeah, exactly. Now, Giorgetto Giugiaro, I'm pretty sure I pronounced that correctly, was the one that was hired to help design that. He designed the F3. He also helped to design, and I had to look this up,
The Pikachu. Yeah,
the
that's
Pikachu camera.
Yes.
Yeah, so the Pikachu, which I didn't know what that was actually an L35 AF.
And I know.
You knew that?
Of course. Because I'm on the market for one, you see.
Yeah.
I want to get this camera.
I would also like a Pikachu camera.
Yeah.
Does it have a Pikachu on it?
No, it's not even yellow.
Pikachu. Anyway, that's my impression.
Okay, I'm done here.
You leave now. Yeah. The L35 AF, apparently, what does Pikachu stand for? PKG. I shouldn't say Pikachu. PKG.
No, I got Pikachu.
It stood for something like trendy form or something.
Yeah, something in Japanese.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, which is a funny old thing for an L35 AF. But anyway, so he designed the F3, the EM, the PKG, and they wanted him to design the F4. And so he was brought on in order to kind of replace the cranks and lever design.
Yeah, I think the last camera he designed was the 800 series camera. Well, but we can obviously see on the 850 and the 810 as well, the signs of that design as well.
Yeah. Roy says, at least the F4 didn't have the F3 hot shoe. Roy has apparently just cracked an F4 out of its box and forgot how much he didn't like the battery compartment. So there you go. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, F3, that hot shoe is a bit awkward. Yeah, I personally, if I could choose, I would get maybe F3P personally. Just for that hot shoe.
For the hot shoe, or the F3 Limited also had the modern hot shoe. Vince says, never had an F4, had the F3 and F5, still have it, and occasionally use the F100 and FM3A, which are an excellent choice of cameras.
Yep.
Thank you, Jeff, for your contribution to the Coffee Fund as well. And Jeremy, missed your contributions. Thank you very, very much. Sorry, I missed one of the comments earlier and I was trying to find it. Someone was saying that they just put new batteries in their F4. Sorry, missed your comment. It was earlier. But it's very fiddly and not to do it in a hurry.
Oh, yeah. And don't leave them there for a long time. We've seen quite a few leaked batteries inside the F4s. But just coming back to design, this is very design of its time, the 80s, those forms, it's kind of boxes, kind of streamlined at the same time.
Yeah.
Think about those cars it's designed by Italian designers, so think about Ferrari. But also think about double cassette player, It's all this kind of straight line and boxy design.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, in hands, though, it feels very nice, very comfortable, because it's much bigger camera compared to F3.
Yes, it's true. And obviously it came with multiple iterations.
Yeah.
Do you know if the F4S and the F4A came out at the same time, or was it later?
They released, let me find that. So F4 with a battery pack MB20, which contained 4 batteries, and F4S, which had 6 batteries, and MB21 grip came out at the same time.
Right.
Yeah, the E version came a couple of years later.
Because the S essentially allowed you to have, was it 6 batteries instead of
6 batteries? That would
4.
push it to about 5.7 frames per second, and the standard F4 would push it to 4 frames per second.
Right.
Which is still pretty good for the time.
It is very good. And one of the things that I will say is that it makes it much heavier.
It is. It is. I would personally go for just a standard F4 myself.
I think that's heavy enough as it is. But even without batteries in it, that's a heavy camera.
Yeah.
So Anyway,
the first signs of things to come with F5 and F6s of the world.
That's right, bulky. And it was probably the last camera that looked like a hybrid between, it was very much hybrid. It looked like a mechanical film camera, although they'd added more buttons to kind of take that away from it. It wasn't yet the Nikon. You know, we did our stream on the F5.
Yes.
That was the first of that sort of classic Nikon digital design. So the F4 was on the fence between those two, I reckon.
Yeah, and I think the reason why it looks so different compared to, to let's say all earlier Fs is because they literally had to build it from ground up. It's the camera that has 1,850 parts.
Yeah.
Has so much electronic inside. So I think the first one came out with about 4 processors, which was groundbreaking at the time, and the last iterations would have up to 7 processors inside. So there's a lot of things that would have to be put inside the camera, and it's, as I say, like it's 1,850 parts. It's the largest camera in terms of parts that Nikon had to produce at the time.
I've actually got a picture here. That is the picture of the parts. All of the different parts that go into an F4. Now, that's quite low resolution, so I don't know how big you're seeing at home on your computer screens, but that's an image that you can get from the Nikon website. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, and they had to design a software. We don't think about software for these type of cameras, but the software holds in 43 million ways of operating conditions.
What?
43 million.
Oh my goodness!
So that's
like a proper computer in there.
Yeah, that's the thing, and we don't think about the cameras of that time as computers compared to, let's say, cameras nowadays.
No, it's very true. You don't at all. Matt asked if anyone else had issues with using Duracell AAs in the F4S. What problem were you having, Matt? Because we have seen Duracells being used successfully, but whether or not there are some batteries that don't get sort of peak performance out of the camera. Sometimes people complained that certain batteries would not give you the full frames per second that you're expecting.
I had similar issues with the Mamiya camera, the Mamiya 7. I ordered specific batteries.
Yeah.
And I put them in and they didn't work. And I think they were Duracell batteries. And then I ordered different brand. They worked in RZ67. They didn't work in the Mamiya 7.
Yeah.
So, and then I ordered different brand of batteries and they worked in 7. The same type, something LR44, something like this.
Yeah,
so I wonder if the issue with F4 is the same. I'm not sure.
It might be because you get certain flashes that have that problem and stuff as well.
Yeah.
Nick asked how you buy us a coffee. So a moment to pitch the coffee fund. Down the bottom, if you're signed into YouTube, won't work if you're not, but at the bottom of the chat, you'll see where it gives you the space to comment. There's a little $sign. And if you click on that, it will say send a sticker or a message, and then you send it, and then you can choose how much you want to contribute to the coffee fund. And thank you to everyone who has. I have to also thank Jeff and Nick, who's going to buy us an Irish coffee with that. Very nice.
Yes.
And Michael, for your contributions to the coffee fund. Thank you very, very much. So Nick Han said, also Nick was asking about the books. Yeah, they will be available from the Grays of Westminster online store. The only other way to buy the trilogy of books at the moment is directly from Uli Koch, and they come from Germany. So there's all the expense involved in doing that. So we're trying to order large amounts. We actually bought 6 sets, 1 there, and then 2 more which were already pre-sold before they even arrived, and then we've got 3 left, so those ones will go on the website. But
I think the previous version of the book that we had, it was pretty much selling out all the time, so we were back to order.
Exactly. So it's got different stuff to the first book as well. So if you've already got the 100th anniversary book, this is very different. This is focusing on the Nikon F specifically, and it's kind of the various iterations that it went through to arrive where it did.
Incredible.
Yeah. So now Terry had an F601, 50, 60, 70, 90, 90X, but no F4.
He had them all.
Them all almost, yeah. So David Liu, who's Dixon, said, I use the F4E with data back for weight training, warm up. Yeah. Heavy camera. You know, the F4E is not one that we get very often.
No.
So remind me, what was the difference between the E and the S?
Okay, let me find. So F4E.
Yeah, because the S gave you the extra battery life and the higher frame rate, and then the E was bigger still. Yeah,
so that one had a battery pack MB23 as a standard.
Yes.
Came out in 1991. So it's got multi-powered back. Well, look, I mean, if you look at the pictures of F4E, it's a bigger battery pack compared to F4S even.
Okay, so Dixon.
So I assume it takes more batteries, but let me double check on that.
Okay, you do that. Well, because that's one that I've used and held an F4S and an F4, no questions. But the F4E, in the time that we've been here, we've probably only had 2, something like that. Not a common one, so it's not one that I've had to kind of put through its paces. I will say the funny thing about the F4 is that it's it doesn't have special editions.
No.
Whereas the F3, they did multiple editions and special editions and press editions and everything. The F4, apart from the F4S and the F4E, that was kind of it. So it was very, very, very interesting. There we go. Baxter said the Nick had rechargeable battery pack. So it had the rechargeable battery pack with it.
Yeah, so you got either 6AA or Nikon batteries.
Yeah.
But apparently Wikipedia also states that it would take 250 exposure bulk film control back MF24 terminal. So I'm not, to be honest with you, I wonder, could you mount that on F4S as well? But
MF24 was was it the MF23 that was the standard one?
yeah, and then you got 250 exposure bulk film back.
Nice. Could you imagine hulking one of those around? You'd need like 3 people to carry it with a 250 exposure back.
Or John's wife.
Or John's wife. So Matt also said the E model took a dedicated battery pack. So that was the rechargeable one, because then later on with the F5,
they had this, absolutely.
They had this as an option rather than buying an entirely different camera just for that purpose. So there we go. Now, I think it was Rudolph earlier, if I can find the message, was earlier, said, I'm surprised that the F4 autofocused with my G lenses. Now, this is an interesting thing with the F4. You don't have aperture control because it didn't have the ability to control the aperture through the body. So if you wanted to use your D lenses, for example, which have an aperture ring, you'd control the aperture through the lens for aperture priority and for full manual. If you were shooting, Yes, for aperture priority and full manual. If you were using program,
yes,
the camera would control the aperture because you didn't have to control. You could lock the aperture.
I see what you mean.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. Okay.
So you were quite sort of had to be on your toes when you used one of those older pieces of glass. The other thing with the F4 is that it also took AI lenses, AIS lenses.
That's true.
And it even has, from the F3 generation, it has that little lever that you push out of the way. I've done a video on that like eons ago on our YouTube channel where you can use pre-AI lenses on the F3, but you can also use them on the F4, and then you get stop-down metering, basically. And if you don't know how to do stop-down metering, then there's also a video on our channel for that. But so it would use the full range of Nikon's lenses, essentially. So pre-AI, AI, AIS, and then AF. Now, the G-type lenses, oh my good gracious.
I found a limited edition of a 4 that was developed just for NASA and was used on a space shuttle.
I'll have to find a picture of that, but I'll have to do that while you're talking because I can't talk and search at the same time. And
all right. Well, the funny thing about the NASA one, obviously, it was developed for NASA. It was based on a 4, but it's also had a dedicated digital CCD sensor with 1024 by 1024 pixels on it.
Really?
How cool is that? The size of the sensor was 15 by 15 millimeters. So it's a tiny format.
Tiny little sensor. Yeah. That's so cool.
So it came out in 1991. So digital cameras existed way before D1.
So you'd actually get an image of that. Oh, that's a nice picture of the F4.
It is a nice picture of
I should have shown that one.
No, you need to go type in F4 NASA. Let me find it. If you scroll down.
Yes.
Scrolling. Here you go.
There it is.
Over here.
I want to show you this picture. Because
how cool is that?
It's something else. There we go. Wow.
I like the streamlined design of the battery pack.
Well, it definitely wasn't going to float away.
Yeah, it wasn't designed by the Italian designer.
No. Well, that part wasn't for sure. And they put D lenses with it, which is interesting. Anyway,
Giorgetto
it's a bit fun.
Giugiaro.
Giugiaro. I think so. I mean, I'm not Italian, but
that's true.
That's true.
But you know, Chris Pratt is going to play Mario in the Super Mario movie.
Why?
No one knows.
It's a me.
Exactly.
That's ridiculous. I also would like to show, just for the point of being really, really nerdy,
the accessories for your F4.
This is the accessories. This is the Hercules computer that came with it. Anyway, just if you look at the size of the computer in comparison to the F4, you can tell how big that is, right? It's fantastic. Anyway, so there was one special edition. I was wrong.
And I just found it on the internet.
Fine. But that's okay. I don't mind. I can be wrong sometimes. So going back to the lenses, you can, as I say, absolutely use your G lenses, but you won't be able to control the aperture. They would just be stuck. They'd be stuck wide open, wouldn't they?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, you just shoot always. If you have a 2.8 lens, you could just use it there.
Yeah.
But the fact that Rudolph says that autofocus works is very interesting, I suppose, because the older G lenses still have that screw type fitting at the back.
That's true.
Whereas your E-type lenses, so your electromagnetic diaphragm lenses, which are obviously all the ones that are coming out these days, don't let you control them at all.
Do you know the difference? And that is, I just don't know. So forgive me, the viewer. So f3 AF lenses, what's the difference between f3 AF lenses and just kind of standard AF lenses that Nikon designed after it, non-D types?
I don't know what the physical difference was. The concept, as far as I understood, was the same, but you can't use f3 AF lenses, as far as I know.
Well, that's my question, yeah.
On current cameras, perhaps because the positioning of the screw mount is in the screw drive system is in a different place.
So effectively, we will call them publicly released prototypes.
Yeah.
In a way,
yeah.
Okay.
Sort of. Thank you, Nick, for your contribution to the Coffee Fund.
Thank you.
As well. Yeah, the F4 wasn't a full-frame digital camera. That's right.
I wish.
Now, Roy said that Kodak had a better digital version.
They did, and that's why I said the digital, cameras existed way before, and I knew people were going to mention Kodak.
Yes.
Because remember we talked about it when we talked about F5.
That's right, we did.
I think they were known as early as 1970s.
Wow. Gosh. But Roy said the F3 contacts were in a slightly different order.
Oh, I see, that's where it is, okay.
I knew that it was a physical problem. It wasn't like a software issue.
The reason why I don't know about this, because we literally, I think, had one F3F like in 10 years.
That's right.
And it didn't spend much time in here. I think it went in about a week or so.
I think the problem was that whenever we were offered F3AFs, the seller didn't necessarily have both lenses. And that was also often a sticking point because whoever would want to buy on an F3AF,
they would want to buy a whole set.
Would not want to go hunting around for another lens. So that was...
Makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. Now, Damien says, I'm using Varta Industrial Pro AA batteries on my F4S without any problems for years. So another F4S user there, which is fantastic. But also that's a good tip for anyone who's struggling with battery types. I think that these days, because obviously the instruction manual will say, we recommend you use blah batteries, but so much has changed in the last 34 years. That's true. But it's quite good to get a modern take on what can be used and what's compatible.
I wish someone would design a battery pack that would just, you could plug in your USB-C cable in and it would just charge it up. Because effectively all those power banks that we have, they've actually got the batteries inside them.
Yeah.
So if you design it in a shape to fit, let's say F4 or F5, that would be super cool, isn't it?
Yes. It would be really
business
useful.
idea.
But I suppose then it would have to be really promoted far and wide. It's a shame none of us are electrical engineers that could do something.
And just shove some AA batteries and 3D print the casing.
A power pack. Yeah, something like that. Then Oliver says, I always wanted an F4, then the F5 was released. I ended up with that instead. One camera I very much regret selling, which I understand completely, Oliver. And I also said thank you all for your time in the shop on Wednesday. We have people actually coming into the shop these days. Just so you know, if you were wondering, we are open and we do let people in the shop. No appointment necessary. He said it was certainly a very interesting visit and I hope to be in again in the not too distant future. Well, we hope so too, Oliver. And thanks for saying hi at the photography show as well. It's nice having people come in.
That's true. It's nice to see real people every now and then.
Yeah, exactly. Although everyone decides to come in at exactly the same time of day, which is quite interesting, around lunchtime. So if you ever want a quiet period, come after lunch.
Yeah, I think people meet up somewhere around the corner of the shop, say, let's go all in at the same time.
Let's go.
There's like 20 people through the door.
And then that's it. It's amazing.
No, I guess lunch, but if people go in for lunch, maybe they work around the area or something like that.
It's true. Yeah, exactly. This is a convenient time to toddle up to Pimlico. Tulia Carter said Minolta got AF from collaboration with Leica, apparently.
Leica is famous for their autofocus.
That makes sense. Did I read that wrong? It says Leica, but I assume that was Leica.
Leica, yeah.
I assume so. Anyway.
I wish I would know much about Leica, though. I know they had the
thought.
SLR version. So they had the rangefinders and they have Leica R, I think. Yeah, that was their SLR versions. And one of the later Leica Rs they would design a digital back that would go on the back of it. I remember reading a review somewhere in British Journal of Photography, I think.
Wow.
So, but autofocus, I'm not 100% sure.
Well, Greys of Westminster exclusively Nikon and Leica in parentheses.
Sounds nice, isn't it?
It has a nice ring to it.
Yeah.
It's only because we all just want to try the cameras out.
Exactly.
That's it.
And then we can move on to Hasselblads and
move on.
phase ones.
I think that's one thing that I've noticed with photographers. And I mean, the thing is that I think every photographer in some form or another is a little bit of a gearhead.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's totally okay. And this is a safe space for you because we are too. But, you know, it doesn't... Although we're obviously exclusively Nikon and we know a lot about the history of Nikon and we have vast gaps in our knowledge of history.
Yeah, and we can use Wikipedia as well. Yeah.
There are areas where I go, oh my gosh, I know nothing about that camera. And then other areas where I know a lot about a particular camera. But it's just, I think no matter what the brand is, we have interest.
That's true. We're geeks and we like to use cameras. We're not loyal to one brand. We try to experience all of them.
Yes.
Unless we're not interested in some of them. So like, let's say, you know, let's not
The
name names.
301s. And
Yeah, exactly. But, you know, we
there.
like to use Nikons, but we also use other brands ourselves.
It's very
Just
true.
for fun of it, because it's always good to have a bigger picture, isn't it? Then you can understand how good the brand that you like is doing against other brands.
Exactly. And I think there's no one brand is, you know, miles better than the other because they all have their own strengths.
That's true.
And weaknesses.
Yeah, and we are different people. We like different things. It's normal.
Exactly. If everyone liked the same thing, it'd be very boring.
That's true.
Yes.
Yeah.
Jagannath says...
That would be Soviet Union.
Right. I'm saying nothing. So the Jagannath says F4 was my first real camera, which got me started on Nikon. That's quite interesting that was your stepping stone into Nikon, because for a lot of people, I think it was smaller cameras. But it's great. Thank you for sharing. And also thank you to Israel for your contribution to the Coffee Fund. Very much appreciated. So Russell, who was the one that said my G lenses work on my F4 autofocus. I'm surprised. Said the F3AF lenses have motors in their body as well. So it wasn't just a screw drive system. I'm being educated here today.
So F3AF lenses have built-in AF motor. So that was effectively the first lens with built-in motor, not the AFI type.
Yeah.
Pre-AFS, there was AFI.
Yeah.
Which came out around late years of F4, actually. I think it was 600 AFI came out.
AFI, yeah.
Yeah, but I didn't know that F3AF had a built-in autofocus motor. Interesting, very interesting.
And Albert said, so thank you for this education. It's great. Albert said the AF80 f2.8 used internal lens motors which use special voltage, which the F3 and F4 have, but the F4S and the F4E don't.
How interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, when we get to the point where we're doing our F3 stream, we will dedicate a bit more time to the F3AF. But it's just interesting that it was almost like a prototype for the F4, but not really, because it had its own lenses. The F4 sparked a whole generation of lenses. And that's one thing that I think needs to be given credit for, because that gave us our AF primes and our AF zooms that still are usable on modern cameras today. And it kind of made, I think, Nikon glass a little bit more mass market.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. So that was kind of quite a cool nod.
Yeah, it's interesting that about 5 years down the road, when F4 came out, literally the 90% of all sales were autofocus cameras.
Right.
So because obviously parts of F4, there were a bunch of low-price cameras from Nikon, F501, F801, F401, etc., etc. So actually, there was a huge shift, a huge switch from manual focus cameras, F3s, FMs, to autofocus cameras.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the F501, when it came out, what was the little lens that it came with? It was a 35 to 70 AF or something.
Oh, okay.
But the F4...
One of those variable aperture things,
yeah. pushed it into professional.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And it was actually better than F501. So they improved of them. They weren't the first because it came out about 3-4 years later, but they definitely improved the autofocus speed. Because obviously the main priority was the camera to be designed for professional photographers with professional needs, and the speed was one kind of part of it.
Interesting. And the F4, if I remember that we looked at the figures yesterday, in its first year, it sold, 238,000?
Yeah, I think it was within 3 years.
Was in 3 years,
Yeah, in 3 years, yeah. So you got 230 years from 1988. Well, it came out in December 1988.
230 years. 230 units.
230,000 units. Yeah.
Units, right.
Yeah, so again, it came out in December 1988. So let's call it 1989 because it's like December, it's end of the year anyway. So yeah, by April 1991, they sold 230 units, which is pretty good for the camera at that time. Priced quite significantly. I think it came out about $2,500.
Wow.
Which, according to someone's calculations, would be equivalent of something like $5,400.
So it's like a D6.
Exactly.
Well,
exactly.
D5, D6 kind of price. That's very
more or less,
interesting. So, Norm has clarified here on the Minolta side of things. Norm says Leica designed the shutter for many of the Minolta cameras of the 1980s and 1990s. Minolta worked on the bodies for the Leica R3, Minolta XE7, and R4, Minolta XD11. So a little bit like when Nikon and Fuji were working, or, there were several brands working together. So that's quite interesting.
Yeah, it was interesting because they were all rivals, but they were also all collaborating, which is a good thing, isn't it?
Yeah, like, for example, there were rumors at one point or another that different companies were manufacturing different parts for Nikon, and I'm sure that some of it's been confirmed. Obviously, the sensor development part was confirmed because Nikon used Sony sensors for years. Wow.
That's Minolta Maxxum 7000 was the first autofocus camera.
Can you see that? Yeah, you can see that. That is, it looks, I mean...
Again, design of its time, very boxy.
It's very much of an era, isn't it? It really kind of looks like something that was born in the 80s.
That's true. It could transform into the robot, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Roy's just checked, and the f3AF lenses don't have a screwdriver, so it is just the internal autofocus. We are going to talk about the f3AF in our F3 stream.
That's why they look so boxy. Those lenses were big.
Yeah.
So that's why. Okay, makes sense now. Yes.
Interesting. As I say, we will talk about it. So I know the stream keeps going towards the F3AF because that's all anyone wants to talk about.
But I think what we need to understand that F4 was one of the first cameras with autofocus, and now we don't think about cameras that are, we don't think about them as manual focus cameras. Autofocus is such a given thing.
Yeah.
That. We don't even think. It's just there.
Sorry, it's like when we were talking about the F5 and all the amazing things that it had.
Absolutely.
Revelationary. Revelatory.
Absolutely. But at the time, I thought it was groundbreaking.
Definitely need coffee. I've forgotten how to speak English, and
That's
I don't have an excuse.
Me not speakish English.
I forgot. What is the word in English? That's the only language I speak. Ed, I'm sorry you were late, but hello, thank you for joining the show this afternoon. A few people were talking about how their first camera was, their first Nikon was an FM2, and are we going to do an FM2 stream? We should.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many cameras,
Yeah, we've got no shortage.
We're not closing channel tonight, so, we're probably going to be here for another couple of years at least.
Yeah, I would think so.
Until we get rich.
Until we get exhausted and have nothing else to talk about.
And then there's going to be a Colin Becky show on ITV1.
That would be fun. I think for a small niche.
Absolutely.
Of viewers, probably not for the general populace.
Yeah, they'll put us on Sky Arts or BBC4.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. So we've got Norm saying best batteries for AA batteries for use for the F4S are the Energizer lithium, lighter, longer lasting than the alkaline batteries. I thought he was quoting the ad for the batteries then. So Energizer lithium.
Interesting.
Those are the ones to go for. See, with an F6, I don't really have to worry about that. I mean, they take different batteries altogether.
They're smaller batteries, yeah.
Yeah, CR123s, and Energizers seem to do the trick for them. Jan says, F4, the camera that's been through tough wars, fires, floods, hurricanes, earthquakes, tornadoes, blizzards, Steve and Debbie's wedding. It's that personal experience, Jan. It was a tough one.
Yeah, Debbie's wedding was probably the most difficult part, the most challenging.
And I think, because, like, for example, Roy said, I prefer the F3 or the F5 to the F4. I think it's a very personal choice, and I can see that.
Actually, F4, again, improves on F3 in terms of ruggedness. It's definitely a better weather seal. They're just more robust in general.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think that, I mean, I don't know, Dixon, he said, is it true that the F4's AF was so bad that Pro switched to Canon? This is a constant, I mean, it's like when people said, oh, well, people switched to Canon because they didn't like something on the Nikon. It's like...
Yeah, camera wars, console wars, you name it. Android versus iOS.
I'm sure that there were people who decided the F4 wasn't for them and they switched to Canon. But if you've got that much, if you've got a lot of glass in Nikon F mount, it doesn't...
Remember when the D3 came out, people said, lots of Canon guys switched to D3 because, D3 was better in autofocus and it was full frame.
Apparently there's something on our lens. Well, Sam and Foteini, neither of them are here. So it's just us. It says, when you face the camera, you can see something on the back wall. I'm confused. It's actually, there's a mark on the wall. It's not on the camera.
That's how sharp the lens is, you see. Shows everything, all the imperfections.
I was just trying to work it out. It said you can see it's against the back wall. Yeah, so there is a mark on the wall and we will remove it at some point, get the paint out.
That's why I don't look into the camera. So I'm just afraid that's going to cause interference, you see.
So you just have to keep your head turned this way.
Is it good like this? Very natural.
Oh, it's hilarious. But anyway, Randall, it's very kind of you. We've got no producer today, so we are Stan's producer.
Two-man band.
It's fine. We'll survive. And Nick Can suggests we call it Becky and Con Camera Corner with K's.
That's right.
Why not?
I agree, absolutely.
That's the suggestion for the show name. I like that, actually. And thank you, Rob, for your contribution to the coffee fund.
Thank you.
My goodness, very much appreciated. Okay, so Norm has some experience here. He says, Nikon F4S was a great SLR, but the F90X had a faster autofocus system. I used both to shoot snowmobile and motorcycle action photos in the 1990s. Keeper rate was better than 90%.
Sounds good.
So go figure.
Better than G850. No, I'm kidding.
No. And then Roy is hilarious. He said, I just found an F8OS I didn't know I had. So what Roy does during the show is goes and digs through his camera cupboard and then finds
just goes up to the attic and it's just full of cameras.
I love it. It's amazing.
All right, let me find F90X came out. Well, F90 came out in 1992, I assume. Yeah. So if it was 4 years after release of 4. So I would assume they improved on its focus speed.
Yeah, and we see that we can draw parallels in modern day technology.
Yeah. Ooh, you know what? I have a quiz question for you. How many focus points does a 4 has?
9. Was I right?
No, 1.
It has 1. It doesn't have 9. You can't move the focus point around. Aww.
And I heard it's in the middle because it's only 1 point.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So
that's amazing. I thought, but when you look through the F4 focusing screen, does it only have 1 point? Yes, it must do. I must be confusing it with the F5.
That's right.
How interesting. And now we have 400.
Absolutely. You see the simplicity of it, having 1 point and not faffing around,
Yeah. Actually, come to think of it, because like the D40 has like 9 autofocus points, and that's much later technology, just as a comparison.
That's true.
You.
And F4 shot at 5 points, like 7 seconds with the MB21 grip, and it was more than a lot of entry-level cameras nowadays.
Paul says the F90X had 3 autofocus.
Ooh, that's a big improvement.
Yeah, massive improvement.
It was the time where they started to throw the points around, how many points. And then, when G850 came out, it's like, it's 250 points. And then Z7 came out, it's like 463 points, Yeah. And I was like, but I'm only using the center focusing points, so it doesn't really matter. Exactly.
So, yeah, most of us do. And we only use spot metering.
Exactly. But then it became not about the quantity, but the quality. Remember the cross-type points?
Yes.
Those became more important.
More important than the number of points.
Exactly.
Right. Thank you very much to Dixon for your contribution to the Coffee Fund. And he says, peeps, don't forget to like.
You.
This is a good point. 100 of you have not yet given us a thumbs up. So please do. We would love it. It makes the algorithm happy. It makes us happy. Makes YouTube happy.
We like to be liked.
Who doesn't like to be liked, quite frankly? Vince said the FD mount Canon 35-70 ACF lens was something only a mother could love. Luckily, it died a painful death along with the FD mount. Canon changed mounts.
Yes.
Multiple times, right? This was one thing.
Like gloves, honestly.
like underwear.
How many
every day.
mounts did they have? No, we don't use Canon, so we simply don't know.
I truly don't know, but I know that it was a constant gripe, which was why I was so surprised. I mean, Nikon really kept and tried to keep the ethos of the F mount for as long as possible until the Z came along. And the reasons for that were practical reasons. It was, we need more light on the sensor. We need the camera to be smaller. The only way to do that is to make the mount bigger, but here's an adapter. So the F mount has that long legacy when lots of people ask me, well, why did you choose Nikon? It wasn't a conscious decision at the point. It was what was available. Okay. But why did I stick with Nikon was the lenses.
That's true. I chose Nikon because my friend had one and I bought one because he said it's a really good camera and, you know, I trusted him.
My grandfather, my grandmother and my mother all had, my mum, as some of you will know, all had Nikons, and that was why that was what was there in my house.
True.
My paternal grandfather used Canon, but I wasn't heavily influenced by him, thank goodness.
But then, when I started to look at the digital camera, Nikon was the first choice, just based on my experience with the F100.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that the line of lenses and the changing the mount thing is a bit of a stickler point for a lot of people. Nick Can said Canon changed mounts like FD to EF to RF, and then Nikon did F to Z. Leica did M to L. That's it. So Nikon F and Leica, they've been pretty... Well, the Leica M was the screw mount, right? That's quite an ancient mount. I don't know if they've changed mounts more. Are we going to go and do some research on Leica after this stream?
Yeah, sure. We just need to get Leica to give us cameras.
Yeah, just to see.
I'll take Leica, was it MA or MP, whatever they do. They do both. I want the one with aperture priority.
Okay.
Because I'm a cheater.
I want the black and white one that just does
I don't want a manual. I just need aperture priority. I'll be happy,
Okay. Interesting. Norm says, since I shot in the Canadian climate, I really had no need for the cool white Canon lenses, although they were very, very, very sharp, but the F1 body was not as convenient to use as the F4S. Now, you know the grey lenses?
Nikon had some,
They did a couple.
70-200 and I think 300 f4, the D version. Yeah.
Yeah. That was it.
I think that was it. Yeah.
They didn't do an 80-200 in grey, did they?
No, they did not. I remember they were only available in Japan, so we used to import them from Japan.
And why?
And sell them for big bucks because they were always at premium.
Yeah, they were rarer. But my question is, why did they decide to do that?
Well, for hot climates, that was the idea. So I remember Tony used to tell me, it was kind of designed for, to reflect the light effectively instead of absorbing it.
Fair enough. And now when you look at the side of a football pitch or something, you see either grey lenses or black lenses. And
then you know which side you stand on.
Yeah, it's very telling.
No judgment.
Thank you very much, Randall, for your contribution to the Coffee Find. He said, since you don't ever film with the Z mirrorless cameras like the F SLR series, where do you print your pics?
With film?
Well, it says... So, since you don't have film with Z mirrorless cameras, where do you print your pics? This is a good question. Do you mean with film or do you mean with digital? Where do you print your pictures? Because I use an HP printer for my digital images and also sometimes for my film images. Yeah. But I'm quite selective about what I get printed.
Yeah, black and white laser printer for black and white. No.
What a thermal printer.
Samsung 400.
No, I send them off to get them printed.
No, for film, obviously, unfortunately nowadays, as the workflow is you digitize it eventually, which a lot of people say, well, you shoot analog and then you digitize it anyway. That's true.
True.
But you either you scan them with a dedicated scanner or you do a proper DSLR scanning process or mirrorless scanning process where you use either AS2 that Nikon makes, or for larger formats, you can buy dedicated holders and you can use a repo stand or something like this. We can do a whole stream on that, but I don't know how many people want that. But then you would print it, obviously, on a digital printer. And for bigger prints, I would normally go for in London to Print Space or something like this. But at home, I have A3 Plus printer, Epson.
Oh, well, that's fancy.
No, it's Canon.
Oh, no. What?
Well, remember I was telling you that Canon is a printer company.
Joking for the people that have Canon printers.
Yeah.
They make good printers. I would really like one of those massive Epson photo printers.
The one we saw at Photo London, the one Nikon had, that was nice. And it was fairly compact. But I used to print color in a darkroom. I wouldn't say I enjoyed it. It requires quite a bit of practicing. And you do your test prints, not for exposure like you do with black and white, but actually for color output. So I used to, is it CMYK? I'm not sure. I used to call them RGB snobs.
CMYK,
yeah, CMYK. So you need to kind of adjust them to get the kind of right color balance. So it's fun. Some people still do that. It's obviously quite expensive, but you can do that if you want to. But I guess for something that you shoot day to day, it's just easier to digitize it and, just print it if you want to on the printer.
Yes, exactly. I remember when I worked for a magazine, and the head of printing, she would do, I don't know how many test runs over and over and tweak amounts. There's a calibration, you name it. And I just used to be mind boggled by the science of it all. True. But this is why I send my pictures off to someone who knows what they're doing to print them. To
the true artists of printing. Well, actually, proper color black and white printers are in high demand. Yeah. And they booked up for several months in advance.
Wow.
And you need to find those people. It's normally comes by word of mouth and everything. And, if you ask people who shoot film, they say, yeah, this guy is really good for black and white and this one is really good for color.
Interesting. Yeah. Richard Brown, the lovely Richard Brown, who's a regular watcher of the show and
hello, Richard.
Helper, and helped you with your backup stream.
He was my main source of advice, really. Yeah.
Right. So he suggested, and I thought this was a lovely idea, to create a document with a list of all the recommended places to get your film developed, and also potentially printing as well. And I started putting the document together, but it's incomplete. And I would love, if any of you have recommendations of places where you would like to, let's say, endorse and say, look, I had my film devved and scanned here and it was great, or I had it printed here. Yeah. Drop over an email to media@grayswestminster.
Definitely.
media@grayswestminster.co.uk. I will put it into that document. I'll put it in our shareable drive folder.
Yeah, we can separate them by the regions. Let's say North America, Europe, UK, England, So and I still think when I say Europe and UK, I still think of England as a part of,
Technically, we're just not part of the EU. It's two different things. Just to clarify, haven't left Europe behind. Still part of that continent. We're not our own continent.
No.
Not that special.
So anyway, we can do that. I think, it's going to be quite useful for a lot of people.
I think so too, because obviously so many people still have film cameras, still shoot film occasionally. And I just think it's a nice...
Well, we just sent film for development, So I had 4 rolls. You had, 4 rolls as well? Yeah. Some had 4 rolls. So we still use film as well as digital.
Very much so. In fact, I find for sort of like more personal stuff, I use film. I'm more inclined to use film for personal work than digital.
That's true. That's true. Digital for commercial, for anything day-to-day walkabout, stick it on film.
Bye, Chris. Have a good day at work.
Did we bore him with our film talk?
No, he said I've got to drive to work. Chris is a cop. So he's got to do the upholding of the law and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, it's our Chris.
It's our Chris.
Yes.
Hi, Chris. That's very Midlands of you.
Hello, comrade.
So Nick Can recommends the Epson SureColor P8000 printer. Nice. And then I sort of like deviated a little bit from the subject because I started talking about how people changed their mounts, and some of the working pros have said, guys who, when Minolta changed their mount, they left Minolta. When Canon changed their mount, Roy was saying it made their old lenses obsolete. That's one thing that I think Nikon really has going for it, is that you can still use, if in a limited capacity with the Z adapter, you can still use all of your old glass. So,
well, the whole Sony thing happened, Sony, bought Minolta, acquired Minolta, whatever happened, but they, kind of a lot of Sony knowledge comes from Minolta, effectively.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. But Sam's even put a couple of recommendations in there. Yeah, please do drop them to me in an email. I'll put a document together. I
wish Nikon would buy my Mia. I have a soft spot for my Mia for some reason.
I know you do. Rakesh says, did the FM3 have automatic exposure metering? Yes, it did, Rakesh. And we will probably do a stream at some point on I think we should do it on the FM FE series.
Yes, definitely.
I think that's probably the best.
FM, FE, FA.
Yeah, throw in the FM.
Yeah, exactly.
As well. But yes, it did. And it's very similar in a lot of ways to the F3. It's just smaller and lighter. And it's a much later design camera. So another thing that before we select our winner for this week, another thing that I wanted to ask the great people of our YouTube live stream viewership.
The audience.
There was an idea that Harry Skeggs had put on his... Harry Skeggs is a Nikon ambassador. He's a fantastic photographer. He did a huge amount of talks at Photo London and also the photography show. And he was doing this thing on Instagram as a kind of like...
photographic critique?
Yeah, interact with the community kind of thing where people would say, look, I've got this photo. Can it be improved? Is there anything that you'd recommend? And I wondered if anyone would be interested in us doing that as a kind of group exercise. We have the Drive folder. I will put a link to it. I don't know if the link has vanished off our description box, but I can put a link back to it. You are free to share your images there. Obviously, they are your own images and only share images that you want everyone to be able to see because it is a public folder. But we have often... We did a stream where we talked about like some of our highlights.
Oh, I see. And then we talked about the composition and
exactly. But if you'd be interested in doing something similar to that, we could even do like a film edition and a digital edition
for extra fine tones and grain.
Yeah, we could do. And it's not really critique is probably the wrong word because I don't like to critique other people's
I do.
work.
Yeah, I just go full on. Yeah.
So, but I
have no filter.
But I do like to analyze photos.
That's true.
How they made. Hello from Hong Kong. Hi, Richard.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us. Alan said, remember the F4 was designed by Giorgetto Giugiaro, which we were talking about. He said, exotic car designer, Lotus, Esprit, Golf, Mark 1, etc.
Yeah, his portfolio is huge.
It is massive.
There's a good interview with him in New York Times. Just Google it up, just type in his name in New York Times. It's really interesting just about the whole body of work that he produced, not just for Nikon, but everyone else.
Yep, but another person that should have a notable mention for this particular stream is the wonderful Tasiopoulou Goto, who also was on part of the design team and worked for Nikon for many, many decades. He's retired now, and I know that he occasionally does catch the odd live stream.
He does pop in every now and then, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And he also had a large part of the design of that camera and also the F3.
F3, yeah.
Yep, that's right. So
I mean, he had a whole talk with us for F3 when he came in here, 2-3 years ago?
When he retired, I think it was 4 years ago now.
Wow, time flies.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, so really interesting to hear him talk about the F4 as well, because I think at the time, Nikon didn't know how it was going to be received as a camera for over the
it's like a normal pattern. They don't know how the camera is going to be received. No, yes,
exactly. And I think that it wasn't as popular as say earlier bodies and later bodies, but it still sold a huge number of units to professionals in the first few years. So anyway, I think we can safely say that it go down in the annals of Nikon. Right, I'm going to do the competition winner now.
Yeah, but before you do that, actually, did you mention that we have, 10% off on second hand?
I didn't. Thank you for reminding me. Yeah, so on the website, we have 10% off all of our second-hand department at the moment. Maximum discount is £150. So just bear that in mind. The code is October10 off, all one word. Can't pay by finance if you want to take advantage of that. But yes, absolutely do take advantage. If you're in non-UK and Europe, then you have to order over the phone. You can't order online.
Because we just need to calculate the shipping to your country.
Yeah,
that's all it is.
And there's a way to automate it, but it gets very complicated with taxes and import duties and stuff. So if you would like to do that, then please head over to our website. We've got quite a lot of stock that's
lots of vintage equipment.
And lots of Zs.
Yeah, no F4, bunch of Z6s actually.
No F4s, which is really weird.
Actually, had a guy who said I just want to do I want a Nikon camera, but I'm into video. I was like, just get Z6.
Yeah.
It's pretty much the best Nikon video camera. So,
absolutely. No, I have to agree with that. But loads of film bodies, lots of F3s on there as well. Graham says, I might have relieved you of a couple of lenses already. Excellent, Graham. Thank you very much for that. There's loads of lenses on there. As I say, we have just had a load of stock go live this morning and we'll have more over the weekend. So that will, yes, we do have 105 macros, but not the one that you're after, John. Not the Z one.
The F mount.
We've got F mounts. We don't have Z mounts in second hand.
It's actually a good time to buy 105 F mount now because we're getting them in as a part exchange towards the Z mount. So the price on them kind of going down quite a bit.
Yeah, a lot of people are saying that we should use the word sprouts. I'm not a fan of sprouts. We should do that one for Christmas.
No, cabbage is good.
Cabbage will do. I mean, sprouts are basically tiny cabbages.
So.
Yeah. Right.
Unless they're Brussels sprouts.
That's what Brussels sprouts are. They're tiny
and
cabbages.
they're European.
Are they?
Cabbages.
Oh, yeah. But they're also tiny.
They are. Okay,
so let me get this right. What am I doing here?
Okay, we're going to use the gizmo again.
Yeah, so you have to just pretend there's loads of fanfare spinning.
Okay, H3 people, got into the thing.
They said the word lemon.
Lemon.
And the winner is... Christopher Walsh.
Congratulations.
Christopher's comment was actually great. He said, I'm surprised Nikon didn't do a Nikon Lemon Yellow ZFC. Although I'd probably still go for a black or mint green model. It's a very long comment. But anyway, thank you, Christopher, for your entry into the competition. We have a David Yarrow In Focus book for you. Please send your address to media@grayswestminster.co.uk. Forgot the email address then. It's definitely getting late.
If you got a rumor to share,
yes,
maybe about Z9, who knows? Also send it to media@grayswestminster.co.uk.
Yeah.
Because we're still waiting.
Yes, we are. Nick Can asked if the 120-300 f2.8 lens can be purchased. It can, not secondhand, but it can be purchased. It is a special order.
800mm also can be purchased,
yes,
if you wish.
Yeah, it's a bit of a wait on that one. We've got one coming in from Europe now. And then
on the way.
Yes, on its way. Baxter says, it sounds like most of the F4s are in the hands of the live stream audience. Yes, you've obviously held on to your cameras and good on you. Nothing wrong with that. So
yeah, we actually, the last one we had, F4 we had, was a brand new one.
Yes.
And that one was on the ground floor and it was sold, a couple of weeks ago?
It was.
Yeah.
For the princely sum of £2,000.
Mm.
Yes. So you can actually say as many comments as you like, but YouTube might block you if you start spamming the comments. So maybe maybe don't.
Not us, YouTube.
It's not us, yeah. So
yes.
What's our keyword for next week? It's cabbages.
Cabbages,
so
yeah. According to Samantha, it's cabbages.
Stream is over. Sam has spoken. Once the stream is over, pop a comment under the video and use the word cabbages however you creatively you like in the comments.
Absolutely.
What I will say is that our gifts are going to have to get a little bit smaller if we're going to do them weekly, or we're going to have to limit them to UK and Europe.
Budget cuts.
I have to say the postage, we had to send something to the US a couple of weeks ago and it cost us £45 to send a very small item. So anyway, but for now, we're going to leave the competition as it is. Tom says, any sign of that 40mm shipment? I might know something, Tom. I might not.
Ooh.
I don't know anything helpful, unfortunately.
Are they on trucks from Europe?
They're on a truck.
Okay, well, that's
Somewhere.
a good news. That's already positive. Somewhere between Netherlands and Italy.
Yeah.
Probably not. I don't know the map.
Italy's not.
I'm really bad with geography. Probably
geography?
Italy and France. No, Netherlands and France.
Netherlands
So is that close enough?
And France,
okay.
and then UK. You wouldn't think it takes as long as it takes to get...
No, because it takes so long. That's why I'm thinking they go through the Italy, then probably to Germany, then back to Netherlands, and then only to France and UK.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It does a whole round robin.
You know what else grinds my gears?
Are you done?
I am done.
Okay, good. Thank you so much for joining us this week. It's been a blast. We will see you next week. We'll be doing another podcast. We've got a shoot booked, although we probably won't have the video ready for next week. But we will be here for another live stream next Friday. Have a wonderful week and weekend all. And we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.